My dad and I, we have traveled, and we were big into hunting when I was younger. We were always in the outdoors, so I loved having that, like that passion with my dad, being able to do that with him. And now I get to do it with my daughter, it's just the best feeling in the world.
Welcome to the Wild Shutter Podcast. I'm Matthew Gailey, and today I'm excited to have with us a wonderful photographer that, again, I've been following on social media for a long time. Really appreciate his work, Robert Ondrish, and you guys may know him as Robert 636 _. I had to look down at my notes to make sure that I got that number right. But Robert's a wonderful photographer. He seems to photograph the same kind of things that I like to photograph. So I was really excited to have him on the show today. He agreed to do it and talk a little bit about his photography journey. And you know that on this podcast, we ask photographers to share with us 3 images that really mean something to them. So I'm excited to hear the stories behind the images that Robert has decided to share with us here today. So, Robert, we'll start a little bit asking just about you, getting to know you a little bit. Tell us about how you got started in photography, and maybe a little bit about what you do in your family life and all that good stuff.
Yes, sir. Well, first, I want to say I appreciate you having me. I would say I got into photography probably in 2017. Before that, I had a passion for wildlife, but I wasn't really into the whole photography aspect of it. I did have a camera with me. Usually they were pretty cheap cameras I'd buy at Walmart, $20, $30 point and shoot cameras. And that really didn't have the best image quality, but I'd go out and just document what I saw. So every trip I'd go to, if it was in the Smokies or Yellowstone, I always had a camera with me, just documenting what I saw. But I would say I got into photography, wildlife photography, in 2017. It was kind of an escape. So what I do for my career is I'm a police officer. I'm a police officer in Maryland, about 45 minutes south of Washington, D.C. And I just kind of wanted something. I was always told by other officers, veteran officers, find something that a hobby or something that you love as an escape from the actual job. So I loved wildlife. So I just went to Best Buy. I grabbed a entry-level DSLR camera. I think it was a Nikon D3400, and I had the 70 to 300 lens that it came with. And I just started taking photos. I would travel to Eastern North Carolina, local places around my house when I was living in Maryland at the time, and just kind of document what I was seeing. I really didn't know how to use a camera. Didn't have any lessons. I didn't YouTube anything. I just kept it in the auto settings mode on the camera and just photographed what I could. But that's pretty much how I got started. And,
well, let me stop you right there. And first of all, say thank you for being a police officer, putting yourself in harm's way every day to keep people like me safe. And, I really appreciate that. We live in a crazy time, and there's not enough people thanking police officers. So absolutely appreciate what you do for all of us. Thank you.
And I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So I'm a teacher, and there was a neighboring school district maybe a month ago now, that had what turned out to be a non-threat, but it was a scarier situation. So like some of our local schools around the area kind of took some precautions too. And we had a number of police officers just show up in our building. Now we have a police officer who does a great job that's employed here. But to see just a group of police officers come in, it just gave everyone, I think, a feeling of safety and security. And that's what you guys do. So thank you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. And actually, I'm currently assigned to our school resource unit. So I'm in a alternative school.
Gotcha.
So, yes, sir.
So you're familiar with exactly what I'm talking about then.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And you see all the craziness that we deal with every day.
Yes, sir. But I also appreciate what you do. My wife is a teacher, and just hearing her stories and also seeing what my teachers go through at my school, y'all don't get enough credit. And so I appreciate what you do as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So that's awesome. Your wife is a teacher, and you guys have 2 children, I believe, right?
Yes, sir. I have a 6-year-old stepdaughter. Her name's Addie, and I have a 1-year-old daughter. Her name's Meredith.
Awesome. Yeah. So are you getting any sleep at all?
I my daughter, she's done pretty good since she's been born. My wife and I have a pretty good routine or schedule for the baby, but for the most part, she sleeps through the night, and we really haven't lost much sleep. So it's been nice.
That's great.
Yes, sir.
So I really like what you said. And everyone that you talk to, they are basically, if they're not a professional photographer, they're using this as a hobby to escape from the stress of the natural life, the job, and those kinds of things. And I think that's just absolutely essential, especially in your line of work. Now, being a young father, do you find it difficult to carve out the time to get that kind of like that mental break that you need?
Oh, absolutely. I've noticed, well, I've not noticed, but since having kids and even since just being married, when I got married or started having a relationship with my wife, my stepdaughter was already there. So I was already taking that stepfather role. I was spending a lot more time with my family. And because of that, photography took a back seat. When I first started dating my wife, I think that first year I only went out and shot one time. Whereas before my wife and my stepdaughter came in the picture, I was with my schedule. I was going out every other week, 3-4 times that week, photographing something. I was traveling a lot more. I didn't have anybody didn't really have any responsibilities outside of work. So I would hop in my truck, and I had a makeshift bed in my truck, and I would sleep in my truck at different locations. But that was my life. I would go to work, and then I'd go somewhere else. Actually, my family always said that they never saw me because once my Friday hit, after my Friday shift, I was gone somewhere. So definitely being in a relationship and automatically taking a fatherly role, like I said, photography had to take a back seat, and it was tough at first. It was a huge adjustment because, like I said, I was always on the go. Photography was my passion. It still is my passion. But I had other responsibilities. I had to be there for my family, and adding Meredith into the picture has definitely added to the challenge. But my wife and I, we communicate pretty well, and she's very supportive of my passion and making sure I'm getting out there as much as I possibly can to just kind of get an escape from work and just have some personal time to do what I love.
Just to refresh and recharge.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I want to ask you, and I know we're going to get to your images here in just a second, but since we're talking about family, Addie, I know from your Instagram stories, has kind of taken a liking to wildlife photography too. And I know that you've had her out with you a little bit. What has that experience been like?
Oh, it's been amazing. Because I've gone out with my dad. My dad and I, we have traveled, and we were big into hunting when I was younger. We were always in the outdoors, so I loved having that, that passion with my dad, being able to do that with him. And now I get to do it with my daughter, it's just the best feeling in the world. But I actually kind of forced Addie into wildlife photography at first.
That's what dads are supposed to do. They're supposed to force their kids into what they like. So you're on the right path.
Yes, sir. My wife was in a wedding in Pennsylvania, and I looked at the location of where the elk are located in Pennsylvania to where we were having this wedding. And my wife's like, "You have Addie. I have to go prepare for the wedding." So I said, "Okay, Addie, we're getting up at 3:00 in the morning, and we're driving 2 hours away to go photograph elk." And she wasn't too happy, but I did buy her a very cheap small camera before we went. And the best part of that was when we got to the location before sunrise, you could hear the elk bugling. And so I had the windows down. She's asleep in the back seat, and what woke her up was a bull elk bugling. And she wakes up and she's like, "What is that noise?" And I said, "That's an elk bugling. You can't see it because it's too dark." And then once the sun started coming up, she started taking photos, and she was just so happy with what she was getting on her camera. And from that point, when I would go photograph, she was always asking, like, "Can I go with you, Robert? Can I go with you?" And I'm like, "Let's go, let's go." And so eventually, I did buy her a bridge camera, a little bit better point and shoot camera, and I bought it for her last summer. We used it to go find some bears in eastern North Carolina. So she saw her first bear, or a black bear in the wild, for her first owl. And then our most recent trip or outing was in February. We went to the Red Wolf Recovery location, and she got to see 2 red wolves, a mating pair. And she was so happy. She had the biggest smile on her face. She was giving me hugs and high-fiving me. She was just so excited, and that just made me even more excited. But she is loving it. She's might not be the most patient person in the world. She wants the animals to show up. I don't think I was at first, but I've learned to just sit back in the moment, enjoy nature and the surroundings. But for her, she's like, "I want the wolves to come out. I want the wolves to come out. I want the bears to come out." But when they do, she's not wanting to leave. I'm like, "We have to go. We have to move on to the next location." "No, I got to get this photo. I got to get this photo." So,
well, she's hooked, and that's awesome. And
yes,
what's really cool is, as the years go on, she has show and tell, and kids, are talking about, she has the experience of being somewhere. She can show this picture that she actually took, and that's awesome stuff.
Yes, sir. My wife and I actually just talked to her the other day about how she's only 6 years old and has had so many experiences that no other 6-year-old has probably had, and I didn't have until I was in my 20s. So it's very neat, and I think she appreciates the moments that she's had out there in nature and just the experiences that we've had together.
That's kind of the same path I followed. I didn't have those experiences until I was older, but we took our kids out with us. Same thing. They had their cameras. They were tagged along with me, taking those pictures, and those memories that we made are just, you can't purchase something like that. It's awesome. And we always have those memories, and, maybe somewhat you met somebody that was a little goofy, and you've got like something that they might've said that you can use as an inside family joke for years, and, all that fun stuff. So
yes, sir, definitely.
That's awesome. So I want to start talking about your pictures here a little bit. I think one of the ones that you shared with me might be hanging behind you there.
It is.
Is that correct? Yep. So that's a beautiful picture of a black bear grazing in some greens. I love how the grass is coming out of its mouth. So many people, they want to villainize black bears or just bears in general. But this picture to me shows what a gentle animal they actually are. They eat a lot of plants, don't they?
They do. Yes, sir.
So, tell me a little bit about the image, where it came from, and how the situation came about.
Yes, sir. So that photo was taken in 2018 in Yellowstone. So I was on a trip to Yellowstone with my dad, and this was our first time together visiting Yellowstone. And prior to going, he found a YouTuber named Stan Mills who does hiking videos in Yellowstone. And one of his more popular videos is a hike he does on the Slough Creek Trail just prior to getting to Lamar Valley. And my dad was adamant. He's like, "We're doing the Slough Creek Trail while we're there." And he's like, "This looks like a great trail for wildlife, grizzlies." Stan Mills saw wolves and bison. And so my dad was ready and set on that trail. So we woke up before sunrise. We get to the trailhead, and we hiked 6 miles in and didn't see a single thing. So we were kind of disappointed, and at this point we wanted to just start heading back because the trail goes on for quite a while. We wanted to head back and try to hit some different areas since we hadn't seen anything. On the way back, we're probably about a quarter mile away from the trailhead, and my dad and I are quite separated now. He was walking a little too slow for me, and I had pulled ahead. And as I'm walking on the trail, I see a cinnamon black bear cub pop out of the tall grass onto the trail, probably about 25 yards from me. And followed by that cinnamon black bear was a black phase or black color black bear following that one, another cub. And then a few steps behind was the mom. She pops on the trail. And they pretty much just stayed on the edge of the trail, grazing, and the cubs were playing. Mom was grazing for about 45 minutes. And we could have gone by. We could have got off the trail and got around. But once my dad caught up, we just decided to sit there on the trail. The sow seemed very cool with us, very calm, relaxed. And we just took in the moment. And my camera was in my backpack. When we got to the 6-mile mark, I put it away because I was like, we're not going to see anything. So I had to pull my camera back out. And at the time, I was still using that D3400. And I had bought a Tamron 150 to 600. So I put that on, had the auto settings on, and just started taking photos and video. The cubs eventually went in the tree, and they were chasing each other in a tree. And for the most part, my dad and I were there by ourselves. It was just us and this black bear family. There was occasionally a couple hikers that would come up. I remember one couple came up and they saw the bear and they said, well, we don't have bear spray, so we're going to turn around before we continue any further. But for the most part, I love that moment. I love that photo. It's not the best photo in the world. And these photos might not be the best photo. But for me, it's one of the more memorable experiences I've had out in nature. And I got to do it with my dad. And I think the photo was actually photobombed. If you're looking at the bear in the right corner, maybe a bird flew by. I think because of the auto settings, it was a slow shutter speed and something flew by. And it looked like a bird photobombed it. But for the most part, I do love the photo. I love the experience. And I'll always remember the 45 minutes I had just with that black bear family as they let us into their world a little bit.
That's what it's all about for me. It's that memory, that experience, that moment with your dad. Those are the kind of things that you'll cherish your whole life and just never forget.
Yes.
And to have an image at all, but to have a beautiful image like that, to hang on your wall, and every time you look at it, you can go back to that moment. You had a bad day, you look at that picture, and it all melts away.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, I love moments like that. Another image that you're sharing with us is of an elk. Now, there's elk in various parts of the country. Where was this image taken?
This was taken in Pennsylvania. Past elk rut, September 2022.
Gotcha. And I was there. I don't know if we were ever there at the same moment. I saw some elk, but for me, it wasn't a great year for photography for elk. It just, there's things going on, I think, in that area that the herds are in different places than maybe where they used to be. So I love this silhouette here and the rim lighting that you got on the elk. Tell us a little about your experience.
So that photo was a goal of mine. I was in Pennsylvania, September 2022. I was actually with my dad. Normally for the previous elk ruts, I've spent somewhere between 4 to 8 days in Pennsylvania photographing the elk rut. Because of a family and kids, I believe I left at 12 a.m. from my house in Virginia. I drove to Pennsylvania, got there before sunrise, and I spent 2 days and 1 night there. I remember telling my dad one of my goals was to photograph a elk bugling with the sun kind of setting behind it, that golden hour light behind it, kind of silhouetted. And so that was my goal. And the first night, my dad and I, with probably 300 other people, were at this one location photographing some elk, and they were pretty far off. There were several bulls. They were fighting and chasing some of the smaller bulls away. And probably about 30 minutes before sunset, behind the mountain, I see this one smaller bull. He comes out of the woods down near this creek, and he decides to just go right on by where all the other elk are, the other bulls and the cows are at. And he's like, I'm just going to walk straight down towards the opposite end of this field. And I saw it. I was like, I grabbed my dad and I said, hey, I'm going to follow this elk because I think this could be a great photography opportunity.
And you're breaking away from the crowd a little bit, right?
And I'm breaking away from the crowd, yeah. Everybody was staying there. I was telling my dad, I know I'm leaving the fighting going on right here, but I think I can make something with this elk. So I grabbed my tripod, I grabbed my camera bag, and I pretty much speed walked down the trail while I'm parallel with this elk as he's continuing down this field. And he eventually gets to the edge where, okay, now we have some great golden hour light coming in. It's kind of behind him. He's silhouetted. And I just started taking photos. And I remember once I looked at the back of the camera and saw that elk bugling with that light, I was so excited. And I have several other images from that night where I was just completely thrilled with what I got. But that's definitely one that I was excited to get because it was 3 years in the making. I think the last time I was there at that location, I completely bombed the opportunity and didn't really know what I was doing with the camera at that point and still had those auto settings, so I didn't get a great shot. But this time I let that ISO go a little high and just took an image and was able to create that. So it worked out in the end.
Yeah, it's a beautiful shot. And,
I appreciate it.
I've been doing this for a little while. I make mistakes literally every time I go out. And I think most people do. You think you're dialed in, then you realize, oh, I blew this highlight or it's too dark or, and sometimes it's the excitement of the moment too, that you get caught up. Maybe you had your settings right for the previous situation and then the light changes and you didn't think, you're worried about getting in position or you're worried about just enjoying the moment sometimes. And it doesn't come out just how you thought, but you were ready that time. You got it.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It was an exciting moment.
I don't want to talk too much about the Pennsylvania elk situation necessarily, but there's a lot of people that are going to see these elk. And actually this year, I'd never heard this before, that they actually shut down the road. I believe it was like on a couple weekend nights to get up to the visitor center because the parking lots were just so full. And I mean, it's not a bad thing, because they do good for the elk, but it's just, if you want to be there to photograph and you had planned to drive there and do this stuff and then the road gets shut down, it's like, not a whole lot you can do about it. But that's kind of where we're at with wildlife photography, nature photography, all these places that are beautiful that people want to enjoy. People are enjoying them. And, it's not a bad thing, but sometimes I guess it kind of can be. But yes, I digress.
Well, for that photo, actually, I had to get to that location, the visitor center. I think it was at 1 p.m. My dad and I got there and we set up. We put our tripods in our seats there because, or maybe that was the next night, the first night, which is when that photo was taken. I think we were further down on the trail from where the actual action was taking place because we got there around 4 p.m. and there was already tons of people there. So the next day, my dad and I decided, let's just get there early, get our stuff set up. We'll walk around, go check out the visitor center, whatever it may be. But for the most part, let's just get our stuff down there because there's so many people there.
Well, what a difference between these two shots, too. You had this one-on-one experience with this black bear, and it was quiet. And it's so different whenever you have a moment like that compared to this elk moment. Not that it's not a great experience and a great shot, but
yes, sir.
There's definitely something different where you're not battling people and just being able to enjoy nature alone by yourself, the way
Absolutely.
I think you would rather have it, right?
Definitely, yes, sir.
But I think that whenever you go to these places, you go knowing what you're getting into. And if you're shocked by that, and if you're getting frustrated, it's easy to get frustrated, but I think that you have to go into the situation knowing what the situation is going to be.
Yes, sir.
And it sounds
Definitely.
like you guys did.
Yes, sir. Just got to plan accordingly.
That's right. Absolutely. So this leads us to this final shot here. These are the red wolves. Was this your trip with Addie?
No, this photo was taken in 2019. This was with
Okay.
my grandfather. Unfortunately, the trip in February, they were just a little too far. But this photo is probably my best red wolf photo. I took this in February 2019. That whole month was just a great month for red wolves. February is their mating period. So it's when they're most active in the year. So my grandfather and I, we were down there in North Carolina at the red wolf recovery area, and we've had a great trip so far. We had several encounters with red wolves. I think at one point we saw 4 together. So that was pretty neat.
And that's pretty rare, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, these are endangered animals.
Yes, sir. Right now, there's a mating pair, and they have their pups, which plenty of people are seeing the pups and the parents together. But at that time, in 2019, there were no pups born that year, wild pups born that year. So it was definitely rare to see 4 red wolves together. I believe one of them actually was they call her the old lady, and she has just passed away. I believe it was in March. But it was definitely very neat to see, and we literally had an encounter with a red wolf or multiple red wolves every morning and every evening. And we were there for 4 days. And but for the most part, the red wolves were kind of far away, and so the images weren't that great. The last day, we were checking out this one road before we left. We were actually heading out of the refuge. And I was driving, and my grandfather was next to me, and I look in this field, and I see 2 heads just picking their heads up. There's 2 wolves laying in this field, and I kind of punch my grandfather, and I say, "Hey, there's red wolves right there. There's red wolves right there." We get so excited when we see them, and it's kind of hard to contain it. But I punch him, and he rolls his window down, and I put the car in park. For the most part, they were pretty calm, relaxed. I did get out of the vehicle and got to the front of the car just because I would have been shooting through the windshield. So I got out of the car and just sat in the front of the vehicle. And they let us photograph them while they were laying down. Eventually they got up, which is when that photo was taken. And we got to hang out with them for probably about an hour. They were very relaxed. Also, with these red wolves, I later learned that they were brother and sister. The one in front, the one on the right is the female, and the one to the rear, the left, is the male. And the unfortunate thing was, during the interaction or the encounter, the 2 red wolves, they actually connected for about 4 minutes, which was a sight I had never seen before. And at first, in that moment, I'm like, okay, this is great. I'm watching 2 red wolves mate. And unfortunately, later on, I think it was several months later, I met with the head of the Red Wolf Recovery Program, and he informed me that they were brothers and sisters, but they were in fact red wolves. And it was still a neat encounter, because a week later I went back and I got to see them again in the same area. They were still hanging out together. It was just a neat encounter. The photo is probably my best, like I said, but just getting to view these red wolves, these endangered animals. I think now there's only 15 to 20 of them left in the wild. At that time, I think there was close to 40 in 2019. Getting to view those red wolves with my grandfather was fantastic, especially since the first red wolf I ever saw was with him. So it was just a neat encounter, getting to, again, be in their world for an hour, getting to see how they interact, what they do, their behavior. It's just something that it's fascinating. You can't really beat it.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool shot too. I like it. Is it cornfields behind them?
So
is that what that is?
So it's not cornfield. I think at that point they were beginning to grow soybeans. I'm not quite sure. I'm not really knowledgeable when it comes to farming and all that. But so in the fields at this location, they usually have a field that's being harvested. So farmers will come in and they have access to this portion of the field, and each field is separated by weeds or grass that has grown up pretty high, and that's what's behind it is grass or maybe an older crop that has grown up. And so those kind of divide the fields where the farmers actually harvest and farm.
Yeah, I kind of like how the color of the wolves kind of matches that background, but you're still able to see their outline. So
yes, sir.
It's really cool. And I definitely, I'm glad you brought up your grandfather because I wanted to touch on your experiences with him. Now, I believe he's on Instagram, isn't he?
Yes, sir. I made him an Instagram.
I can tell you that my grandfather is not on Instagram. But so has he been photographing for a long time? Or is this something he picked up to kind of hang out with you, or how does it all work?
Kind of. So he started getting into traveling in about 2006, 2007. Him and my grandmother, they bought a camper. They said, okay, we're going to just travel. So I think that year they went to Alaska, and he just wanted to document what he was seeing. So he had a camcorder, and he took video, and that was his big thing, taking video. And eventually he decided to get a DSLR. So he bought I think it was 2010, he bought a Canon Rebel something, at whatever was in at that time, entry level. And he started taking photos. It was more so just documenting what he saw. He started traveling to Yellowstone and traveling all over the United States and Canada with my grandmother. And he just wanted to document what he was seeing. He actually took me to Yellowstone my first time in 2011, and then we went back the following year in 2012. So at that point, I wasn't into photography, so I did have like a little point-and-shoot camera. I was just documenting what I saw, but he definitely had his DSLR out there taking photos. He had no idea what he was doing. He was using those auto settings just like I was at the time. But he's gotten more into it since I've gotten into photography. He has a bridge camera now. He didn't want to keep changing lenses, so he bought a bridge camera, and he loves going out with me. I love going out with him. We actually just got back a couple weeks ago from Assateague National Seashore to photograph the wild horses over there. But he just likes documenting what he sees. The whole Instagram thing, making him an Instagram, I told him he has some great stuff, and he always wants to share with people. He's not the most tech savvy when it comes to Facebook or just even pulling up his photos on his phone. So I told him I'd make him an Instagram just to get his photos out there, and he loves seeing other people's photography as well. So he'll go through and see what everybody else is photographing. Not that he knows how to use Instagram per se, but he just likes being able to see what other people are seeing out there and sharing his photos.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And I have to tell you, like, I don't know how long ago it was that he started it, or you started it for him. Mm-hmm. But, as soon as I saw that he was on there, I started following him. And for me, it made me think. So I have a grandfather who passed away, like, as soon as I graduated high school. And he had all these different hobbies that he was in. And one of his hobbies ended up being photography. And he got into wildlife photography. And this is whenever I was young, and I didn't really care about it back then. And then he actually started on the side a wedding photography business and a portrait photography business. And then, down the line, years later, whenever I got into this, I always thought, man, I wish he was still around. I wish I was able to travel around with him and we could take our cameras and experience this stuff together, because that's what he really loved to do. And so I thought it was so cool whenever your grandfather started sharing his pictures, and knowing that you guys are able to go do that just makes me feel good that someone's getting to do that.
Yes, sir. Yes,
building
sir.
memories.
Definitely. And even though I share the photos for him, I definitely talk about which photos he wants to actually post on Instagram or has me post. He definitely loves the owls and he loves the black bears. But we've had a lot of memories together. Stuff I'll definitely never forget. And it's it's been amazing going all over the country with him. I've been all over Canada and the United States with him and my grandmother.
And now, are they footing the bill a lot of times?
They
Because
when I was young,
your
when I was
grandson.
yes sir when I was younger and we were just traveling, definitely them. We'd stay in their camper. They had a fifth wheel camper, and we'd travel from Maryland and just go all over the country for an entire summer. And but now definitely I definitely take care of him. And he still takes care of me as well. We still take his camper out there, and he's providing the home. I'll provide the gas. So
That sounds fair.
yes, sir.
I like that. That's great. So we kind of start to land the plane here.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any plans for the remainder of the year, places that you're looking forward to going to?
I have a black bear trip in Maine. Or I'm sorry, a black bear trip in May. In eastern North Carolina, and then my family and I were visiting Maine. My wife was born in Maine, so we're going to go see some of her family that I have not met yet, and she hasn't seen in the past 5 years. And while I'm there, I'm hoping to photograph some loons. It'd be nice to go see some moose in Baxter, and we do have a puffin tour. I'm not too. I don't know how it's going to go because we're going to be only on a boat, but and we won't be able to actually go visit the island. The permits for that were already booked, but I'm still looking forward to it. And then I obviously have the elk rut in September, and some other things coming up. 2024 will be the year though. My wife has already booked me a birthday trip to Point Reyes for bobcats. And then she and I are going to Utah. So that next year will be a blast. But
Well, that's awesome.
yes, sir.
Yeah. So maybe we'll bump into each other here in September. The elk rut is just a great time. The feeling in the air and the sounds, and it's a magical time of the year. So
Definitely
maybe we'll bump into each other hopefully.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you so much, Robert, for sharing your time and your stories with us. Be sure to check out Robert's Instagram. It's Robert636_ on Instagram. You won't be disappointed. He has just some fantastic images, not only wildlife, but some landscape images as well. Be sure to keep tuning in here to our YouTube channel for more Wild Shutter podcasts. And you can also find us on any kind of audio platforms that you listen to podcasts on. But I highly encourage you to watch us on YouTube so you can see the beautiful images that our guests are sharing with us. So, Robert, I hope that the baby keeps sleeping well and that you're able to stay rested up so that you can get out there and wake up early and go shoot the animals whenever nature calls.
Yes, sir. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys next time.